Hi, I'm Sherry White. Welcome to Farm Friday at Pioneer Village in Wauchula, Florida. Pioneer Village is our farm and it's such an important part of the ministry. It's where the women who are in Lydia's House 1 year residential program have an opportunity to come on weekends to rebuild a relationship that was damaged with their families. And by the time the ladies get to us, they've already lost their children, at least temporarily, some of them permanently. But here at the farm, this was God's design, where women could come and spend quality time with their children. We're here in one of the two log cabins that we have for weekend family visitation. And my guest today is Milu, and Milu is a graduate of Lydia's House, but she's back in the program. And just to kind of tell you a little bit about her story, after she graduated, she did very well. She went on to marry a wonderful Christian man. They had two children together, but Milu got back into addiction, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. Let her share her story, and almost died. And her husband said, if you want the marriage to work, you're going to go back to Lydia's house. And so thankfully she did. And so Milu, we're so glad to have you. So glad you're back at Lydia's house. First of all, can you tell me the significance of this cabin in your restoration with your husband and children? Why it's so important?
This log cabin is so important because it gives you that place where you could, your family, my husband could come with our children and just, the restoration process. And it's just such a blessing to have just a room, privacy with your husband and your children. And, while we're here, it's so peaceful, and you could really feel God's presence when you're here, and it's really helped my husband and me, start opening up to each other, and I really feel the healing that God's doing in each and every one of us, even our children, and it's a really good place.
So explain to us, because some of the people that's going to be watching, they're going to say, wow, Milu, you had everything going for you. You had a great husband, you had two young children, and a beautiful family. Your husband had a great job. Everything was going well. And then he found you in the bathroom early one morning, overdosed, where you almost died. Can you explain, maybe some of our former graduates are watching, can you explain what happened and how you how you got back into addiction?
Yeah. Well, it all started, my husband and I, we were working on trying to get pregnant, and it was meaning to be like a joyful time and everything, and I had suffered a couple miscarriages, and instead of and I should have known better, instead of welcoming and knowing that this is probably God's plan and everything, I became so bitter and angry that why this had happened to me and why God does this, and I started questioning God instead of trusting Him, and I just started pushing everybody away. I remember I became very distant, and I'm learning also that that's the first thing that the enemy takes out is your communication with your loved one, with your spouse, with anybody. You just start pushing everybody away, and
Isolating.
Yeah, and isolating, and that's where I was. My husband I remember he'd come in and be like, we need to go to church. Can we go to church? And I'd just be so angry, and I'd be like, no, you could go to church. You take the kids, and you go to church. And I was just so angry, and I would just take it out on anybody and everybody. And my mind, I literally started to lose my mind, like in Jonah, and I became so oppressed, and my husband was begging me to go get help and go to church or go anywhere and get help, and I was like, and finally I was like, well, I'll go to the doctor and see what they say, and that's where I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and severe depression, and I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I'm crazy. It all makes sense. And then that just brought me even into a deeper depression, a deeper sorrow, and pushed me even further away from God. Because now I'm taking psychiatric medication, and I was even more depressed, more in a dark hole. I started to contemplate I wanted to kill myself. I was plotting all these ways. My husband wouldn't even know. He'd go off to work, and he'd have to be gone for like weeks at a time. And I'd be so suspicious of him doing something and angry for no reason, picking fights, and just wanting to die. I remember I'd pick up his gun while my kids were playing, not even knowing what's going on, and I'd be just crying and angry and sad and going through all these emotions and wanting just to be ended, and I'd even like think of like saving up my medication so I could just take it all and just die, and not even thinking right. And my husband will come home, and I'd act like everything's normal again, and it was just so chaotic. I remember also living in fear. The enemy had me really in fear, and I wouldn't even want to go out to get groceries. I'd just be so scared to leave the house, and I'd think of something was going to happen, and I even fearful driving. I would start having these panic attacks and everything, and just so oppressed. I would hear voices. I would think people are coming into my house, and this is like on the medication that the doctors were giving me that was supposed to be making me better. And instead of going to God, I just kept taking more medication, and if something wasn't right, I'd go back to the doctor and I'll be like, this isn't working, I need something different. And it just became this ongoing of switching medication, and and I wasn't happy. And my husband, we were just so distant. He would come home and be off in a different room, and it'd be like just living with a stranger. Like everything that I fell in love with him about went out the window, and my children like slowly would be coming to me and crying and wanting me to hold them, and I wouldn't. I'd be so depressed. They'd come and want to come lay with me, and I'd just be so like a zombie. Not showing any emotion, and anything that I did show was anger. And I would cry all the time. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I'd be up all night long, and just being tormented. And then finally we moved to back to Florida. This is where I felt led from the beginning. And I would we would just drift away further and further from where I knew I had to be. And finally we came here, and I was at my lowest point. I mean, I was having anxiety attacks. I was being tormented. My mother didn't even know something was wrong, because I would pretend like everything's okay, and then as soon as they leave the house, I'd be so tormented and so sad, and like this spirit of what's it called, of wanting to kill yourself would just come over me. And I'd just be thinking of plotting of ways of just I seen myself as the problem. Here I've had a diagnosis of this mental illness, and I was like, okay, I'm the problem, I'm sick, and I remember my dad even suffering and having these ups and downs like I was, like bipolar people have, and I was like, whoa, it makes sense. My dad was probably undiagnosed. This is the lie of the enemy, and I was like, wow, it's family passed down, and I'm just bringing destruction to my family and to my husband. And I would even like tell my husband, like, oh, you should find someone new, a new wife, and I'm no good, I'm just sick, I can't get any better. And I was just like, all this hopelessness was coming over me, and I just wanted to end it. And I found myself as a heavy burden. And then the enemy started speaking those things. I wanted to take all my medication, But then I was like, the enemy's like, well, you need something that's really gonna get rid of everything. And I used to be a heroin addict, and I was like, wow, it all makes sense. I could just get a lot of heroin and overdose, and no one would even know. And they almost didn't. I remember I plotted everything. I went out. My husband was out of town, and I went to where I know familiar, where I knew I could get some because it was in that same hometown. And I went there, and sure enough, there they were, and doing the same thing. And I went and I got a bag of heroin, I got some needles, and I was like, okay, this is gonna happen. And I went and picked up my husband. He was coming into town, and I went and picked him up. He didn't even know nothing was going on. My mom, I kissed everybody to sleep, and I was like, this is gonna be it. And I went into the bathroom. I even had this plan, like I was gonna fill up the tub and make it look like I drowned myself. That was my thought. That's why my husband found me naked. And I did it real quick, and I hid all the stuff, and I was trying to make it to the bathtub, and I was out. And I woke up in the hospital, and I remember being even more angry. Like, why can't you just leave me dead? Like, this is what I'm meant to be. I'm a burden. I'm unfixable. I'm hopeless. I'm sick. I'm diseased. This is a disease in my brain. I can't get any better. And I was so angry. I was so angry at God. And there's people there trying to, because I couldn't be left alone. They knew I tried to kill myself, but they didn't know what I had taken. Even the cops, they were like searching for everything, and they thought like I overdosed on my medication because they couldn't find anything. And then after they left, my husband and my aunt found the things, the heroin and everything, and they seen it was an overdose. And at the hospital, my husband didn't come see me. I went to the psych ward where they just had me on watch. They because I just tried to hurt myself and kill myself, and they put me back on medication, back on the medication that I didn't want to be taking in the first place, and I just was so angry. I was so mad. And then my husband, he finally picked up the phone when I called him at the psych ward, and he goes, "You're going back to Lydia's house." And I was like, no, I don't want to come back to Lydia's house. I was like, can I just do anything else? And I hung up the phone, and then I called him back, and I was like, can we just do this and that and this and a different option? And he's like, no, you're going back to Lydia's house. And I was so angry, and I slammed the phone, and I walk away, and I go to my room, and I haven't talked to God. I haven't talked to him since I was angry at him, and I was yelling at him for the things that I was saying that he caused, and now I know that wasn't that. And I was so angry, and I was in this little room, and I was like, God, I'm so angry right now. I don't want to be here. And he said, you're going to Lydia's house. And I was so angry.
Why were you angry about going to Lydia's house?
Because it was, I don't even know. I was just full of anger and hatred. And I just was opposing everything that I knew I had to do. And I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I was just full of anger. I remember there's episodes at the house where I would just go off and wake up angry and want to break stuff. And I was just like full of this hatred and anger. And my kids will run away, and I'd be off like trying to, just shaking the bed or anything. I just feel so angry at life, at everybody. And I was mad.
So you came back to Lydia's house because your husband said that's the only hope that our marriage has. And you came back, which had to be hard. You've already graduated the program. It's a tough program. I'll be the first to admit Lydia's house is no joke. And you have to really work through your issues to be here. But once you came back, and of course one of our stipulations is you cannot be on psychotropic meds. We're not a medical facility. We're not a psychiatric facility. we want to deal with the real person, the real problems, or we want to get to the root of the problems. And so for us,
Yeah.
we just don't allow any girls to come in who's on psychotropic meds. And we've had many girls, most girls who've been in addiction for a long time have been diagnosed. Some of them have dual diagnoses. And that's a decision they have to make with their physician if they want to get off the meds to come to Lydia's house. But you made that decision, and I just see you flitting around just as happy as a peacock.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and the doctor at the psych ward was even trying to tell me, well, this place is not going to allow you to take your medication. Maybe you should find something better. Maybe you should find, and nobody could understand. And you know, I was even had that lie, you know, that I'm sick. You know, these doctors were like, look, there's a chemical misbalance in your brain. You know, you need this medication. There's, you know, if you don't take this medication, it's going to keep happening. All those, and it's just, you know, you're right. I came here, I gave it all up, gave my medication. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on me. You know, there's a lot of hurt, things I picked back up, things, unforgiveness, you know, mad. I was, you know, angry. And angry at my husband, and he didn't even do anything. You know, I was just mad, and because I didn't control. You know, because things like I wanted to have this baby, I wanted to have these things. I seen my life. I was trying to control everything. You know, and God was showing me He's in control. To trust Him.
wow.
And you know, I quit taking the medication. And you're right. The Lord hit me first of all with this amazing presence when I got here. You know, I thought that I wasn't going to be able to be happy, you know, and that's another lie, you know. He hit me with this overwhelming joy, you know, and it stayed in me, you know, at the church that we went to. I think it was the second church service that we went to, and I remember I went down on my knees and I cried out to God, and I was like, okay, here I am. I'm sorry I've been running. I'm sorry I've been doing all this, and I came with all my sins, everything that I've done wrong, my selfishness, my anger, my hatred, you know, my control and everything, and okay, work with me, help me. You know, and then He hit me with His presence, and I was laughing, and I was happy, and that joy came instantly. You know, I remember Miss Shannon, she even came and touched me, and it came into her, and she was laughing, and the girls didn't understand what was going on. And if you knew me where I was just a couple weeks ago, you know, in this dark hole, in this grave, and not wanting to hear nothing, see nothing, you know, feel nothing. I wanted just to die. And He overwhelmed me, and He said, no, I'm not finished with you. You know, there's work to be done, you know, and He brought me back here, you know, and now I know it's for a purpose, for He has a plan, you know, and even though I can't understand it, I don't know it, you know, and He's starting to reveal little pieces and little pieces.
So you've given up control, and we're just seeing God do amazing things, not just in you, but in your husband,
Yes.
in your children, in the restoration process.
Yes.
So when you first come to Lydia's house, you're not allowed to have outside contact for the first 30 days.
Yeah.
And then you can begin to have phone calls on Sunday afternoons, two 15-minute calls, I believe. And then after 3 months, you can have your family come to the farm on Family Day, which is the third Sunday of the month. And we have worship together, we have a meal together, we have family class, you get to take your kids around, show them the farm. So what was that like after 3 months separation, where you had almost died in your addiction? Your kids, nobody would have understood, and then all of a sudden you get to see your family. What did that feel like?
It was overwhelming love, because before I didn't even want to be here for them. You know, I wanted to just to die. I felt like a burden. I felt like I didn't deserve to be a mother. I felt like a sick person, you know, like my brain was sick, like unfixable, you know, and God like stripped that away from me, and He showed me, you know, it is fixable through Him, you know, and the voices stopped, the oppression stopped. I'm able to sleep soundly, you know. I don't think about hurting myself.
Do you hear voices anymore?
No. And I used to hear voices, Miss Sherry. I mean, I tell the girls like this one story, like I would hear my husband talking to somebody in another room, and I would go in there and I'd be mad. Why are you talking about me? And he's not even in the room. He's outside cooking steaks for the kids, and another episode too, like my son, he was sleeping in his crib, and I was so angry and mad, and then I would hear him screaming and crying, and I look in there and he'd be sound asleep, and I'd be hearing a baby crying, like it was demonic. And I don't hear those things. I don't hear voices anymore. I did when I first came in through the doors. I thought the girls were talking about me. I thought I'd be in the shower and I'd be halfway out the shower, like who's saying that, and hearing things, and it's completely gone. Completely gone. God has delivered me from those things, and
the one thing as a society, even as a Christian community, the one thing that we have gotten away from is the fact that there is demonic activity.
Yes.
We have just stepped aside that, and we have turned completely, everything now is mental health.
Yes.
But when you get into the Word of God, there were people who were oppressed, there were people who were possessed, there was demonic activity, and Jesus, he delivered so many people who were demonically possessed, and I don't know why the church isn't looking at that and saying, wait a minute, where are these people going?
Yeah.
Where do they go for help? They're getting medicated, they're getting diagnosed, but they're not getting delivered. And this is one of the reasons we don't allow the girls to be on psychotropic meds. And I am not telling somebody they shouldn't be on them. That is between you, your doctor, and the good Lord. But I'm telling you how the Lord instructed me to run Lydia's house. And that is, we do not want to deal with zombies who are medicated, who have no emotional ability. If you're sad, we want you to feel your sadness. If you're mad, we want you to be mad. We want to know what you're really struggling with, because we know the name of Jesus is greater than the name of heroin. It's greater than the name of meth. It's greater than the name of cocaine. It's greater than the name of bipolar. It's greater than the name of schizophrenia. We know that God had one answer for mankind, and his name is Jesus Christ, and his name is above every name. And Jesus came to set the captives free, and whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And Milu, we're just so thankful for what God's done in your life, the testimony that you have, and that you were not ashamed to look and to share that with people, that I fell back, I went back, I did some stupid things, I almost died in my sin, but God was so merciful to me, and you know what? The best is yet to come.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today at Farm Friday.